Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mercifully, there are no more UKIP members of Parliament in this chamber, but we have to remember that in the last European Union elections, they won the most number of seats. Certainly in our county of Shropshire, they won the most votes when those elections took place. And I think that in the debate today, we haven't really referenced properly the huge numbers of British people who voted for UKIP in the EU elections because of their frustration with the European Union. Now, I consider UKIP to be a very malign, rabidly right-wing organisation and party, and some of their language on migration and immigrants was a real concern to me, particularly being the first ever Polish-born British Member of Parliament and very, very proud of the extraordinary contribution that 1 million Poles have made to this country. Now, I'm pleased that UKIP is withering on the vine, and today even Nigel Farage has quit UKIP. But what really concerns me, Mr. Speaker, are the references in this debate and during the course of many speeches for a wish for a second referendum. I'm absolutely convinced that if we have another referendum, if we try to overturn the decision that was taken, this will give wind to the UKIP sails and they will be resurrected as a genuine political force. Now, many members of Parliament have spoken about how we will have to spend many years adapting ourselves to our new relationship with the European Union. I have to say to them, clearly they're oblivious to the amount of constant work we have had to do in this chamber, adapting ourselves to their move towards a supranational state. And there are two issues I wanted to address briefly. One is the single currency, and the other one is the EU army. There are 19 Eurozone countries, but the 8 that don't have the Eurozone are contractually obliged so to do. They have no alternative but to join the Eurozone. And yet the people in these countries, Mr. Speaker, don't wish to abandon their own currencies. In the Czech Republic, 71% of the electorate don't want the euro. In Sweden, it's 72%. And in Poland, the country of my birth, 62% of the electorate don't want to give up the zloty. And yet, they are moving towards a single currency for the whole of the European Union. Now, I know we have an opt-out, Mr. Speaker, one of only 2 countries with an opt-out, but it's not inconceivable that at some stage in the future, if we remained in the European Union in 10 or 30 years' time, they will come back to us and say, you know, you thought you had an opt-out. Well, think again. We can't have a system with 28 countries using the same currency and you having an exception. Secondly, the European army. I take my daughter Alexis to the Polish-Russian border every year for our summer holidays. And I say to her, darling, this is the most highly militarized part of Europe. And if the tit-for-tat missile deployments continue at the pace that they have been over the last few years, this will be the equivalent of the North and South Korean border. And yet, they are wanting to create a single European army, which at best will duplicate the services of NATO, an organisation that has kept the peace on our continent for 70 years, and at worst will usurp the supremacy of NATO in this being the supreme defence posture for the continent of Europe. And let's not forget, when we pull out of the European Union, who are the 6 countries that are committed to the common defence of our continent that are not members of the European Union and never will be? America, Britain, 2 permanent members of the UN Security Council, Canada, Iceland, protecting the Atlantic, Norway in the extreme north, Turkey protecting our southern flank from ISIS. Extremely dangerous moves. Mr. Speaker, I want to come on to the 2 issues why I have real problems with this withdrawal bill. Yes, I give way.
Can I go for my honourable friend and neighbour for giving way? Could he just confirm, as he knows public opinion in Poland well, that we have this idea that it's the European Union that's kept the peace, but people in Poland will know, having escaped from the Soviet Empire, that actually it was NATO that has kept the peace in Europe and brought freedom to those eastern countries.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more with my Shropshire neighbour. And of course, we are relatively safe here on our island. It's those frontline states like Poland that will really face instability if anything is done to usurp the supremacy of NATO. The Russians understand that NATO is united and strong, and any deviation away from that could put countries like Poland and others at risk. Mr. Speaker, the two issues that I have with this withdrawal bill, and of course I look at our colleagues from the DUP as I say this, the Northern Ireland backstop. The Attorney General yesterday did not give me sufficient guarantees that Northern Ireland will be protected in the event that the backstop will have to be utilised. We owe a debt of honour to the people of Northern Ireland. And of course, the member for North Downs said that the DUP don't represent the whole of Northern Ireland. Well, they are here and they are our interlocutors. And if they are telling us, as the representatives for people of Northern Ireland, that they genuinely have a concern about the backstop, it would be highly irresponsible for us as unionists to ignore those concerns. I have to say that the determination of the people of Northern Ireland to remain British in such extraordinary adversity is remarkable. And I'm very proud of their determination to remain within the United Kingdom. The Attorney General looked at the DUP last night and said, you have to vote in the interests of the whole of the United Kingdom. Well, I have a message for the Attorney General. There is no United Kingdom without Northern Ireland. And the second point that I have a problem is, and I asked the Attorney General in a one-hour telephone conversation last week, how much of the 39 billion do we really owe? Tell me your legal advice, how much do we really owe? He told me a figure in private over the telephone. However, when he was asked that same question yesterday by my honourable friend from Shipley, he said the figure was too difficult to calculate. Again, I asked the Prime Minister this afternoon for assurances, and she did not give me a clear answer. And what really concerns me is, whilst we in Shropshire are facing real shortages for our local schools and hospital, we are, under this agreement, likely to hand over another £39 billion of British taxpayers' money to the European Union, which is simply unacceptable, for a possibility of a maybe of some treaty further down the line. Now, we have seen this week that Monsieur Macron has threatened to block the trade agreement with Mercosur, which has been dealt with over the last 8 years because of the new Brazilian President Bolsonaro's pledge to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Think about what would happen to the Conservative Party if we had handed over £39 billion and 2 or 3 or 4 years on, still no trade agreement. That would be devastating for our party and devastating for our country. And as things stand at the moment, Mr. Speaker, I will find it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to support this EU withdrawal bill.